St. Brigids 116, Scotstown 112. St. Brigids are into the All-Ireland Club Senior Football Championship final. An incredible moment for St. Brigids, back in the final, second time in 3 years, of course, as well. So an incredible achievement for St. Brigids. There's no doubt about that. And look, an entertaining game, maybe not as good as yesterday. I think we would say about that. We would say that about this game. Second half was a little bit different. In terms of, I thought the first half was absolutely brilliant. It was neck and neck. Both teams were driving at each other. The intensity was brilliant. We saw some brilliant goals. Brian Derwin's goal in off the post, an absolute quality goal there. Jack McCarron getting on the score sheet as well. And we saw some brilliant 2-pointers, the likes of Francis McGuire getting one for Scotstown, Bobby Nugent for St. Brigids as well. But it did feel like once St. Brigids built up that, there's a 5-point swing right at the end of the first half. And that seemed to kind of really turn the tide in terms of the game. And it felt like Scotstown never really recovered after that. And it was an interesting one because with St. Brigids, like I don't think they were. It felt like it wasn't like they were hanging on as such. They were fairly comfortable towards the end. But Scotstown missed a lot of chances, a lot of opportunities. They had that one block from Jack McCarron. Jack McCarron has a chance which is kind of blocked on the line. Did a few other opportunities as well. But Brigids were missing opportunities as well. They were missing a couple of chances, and they didn't quite take some of their big opportunities when they came in the second half. But ultimately, they had the lead, so they could afford to miss one or two chances where Scotstown really, really had to nail them. But I think the big talking point really, though, of this game is Rory Beggan. He only scored 1 point in the game, and I think a lot of that was down to St. Brigids. Like, they were absolutely brilliant. In terms of their kickouts, they pushed up on his kickouts. They didn't allow him to get as much space as what he would usually do. And yeah, their press was absolutely brilliant because Rory Beggan's effectiveness from kickouts wasn't there. A lot of the time as well, when he was coming out with the ball, they would dispossess him. They didn't really allow his influence in the game. And from what I've seen, there was different people sort of picking him up at different stages. Like Paul McGrath would go in and get a couple of challenges. Eddie Nolan did as well. And yeah, it was very, very impressive. And, you had that one moment where Beggan was dispossessed and Ben O'Carroll nearly lobs the keeper. Like it was nearly more so to the detriment of Scotstown in this game. And a lot of that, brilliance was down to St. Brigids. You understand why Scotstown had that game plan. It worked so brilliantly throughout Ulster. But without doubt, Brigids were fantastic in regards to that. Bobby Nugent today was absolutely outstanding. 7 points in total, 5 points of which coming from frees, a 2-pointer in there as well. So he was absolutely brilliant. But yeah, we kind of said it in the preview coming into the game. Like I backed Scotstown to come through it, mainly due to their sheer quality, and I thought their quality would make the difference. I always said that Brigids' system was far better than Scotstown in regards to that, but I thought the individual quality of your Rory Beggans, of the likes of Jack McCarron and Conor McCarthy and so on, but that wasn't the case at all. As I said, Brigids stemmed the influence of Rory Beggan. Jack McCarron scored 1-3, and I thought he was Scotstown's best sort of attacker in the game. But yeah, absolutely brilliant from a Brigids perspective. They kept the ball brilliantly. The turnovers in particular were absolutely outstanding. Like Brian Stack as well was brilliant in regards to that. Had a bit of a bad fall in the game as well, so hopefully he's all okay there. But Rory Fallon as well, like getting a good amount of turnovers. The work rate of this Brigids team was tremendous, and not that they didn't have the sort of significant quality that Scotstown have. I mean, Ben O'Carroll's a phenomenal footballer, but he was limited to just 1 point today. I think Ryan O'Toole will be happy enough in regards to that, and Scotstown will be happy with that. But they were just kept at, Ben O'Carroll was kept at bay, but they had Brian Derwin, Bobby Nugent, and Paul McGrath in particular, who was probably their best player in my opinion, scored 2 points. So he was absolutely brilliant as well. Few comments here. Gavin says, I want to be that number when the Saints go marching in. Yeah, great win. Can't have Gaelic Fan TV without the club final. Completely wrong. But yeah, it's just to be fair, like I did say, like anything could have happened across either of these two games. Like you saw yesterday, neck and neck. Well, not neck and neck. I mean, Ballyboden were leading for the majority of the game. you know, like very, very little between them. It could have really went either way. But yeah, of course, in typical fashion of this channel, the way I call it, it goes the opposite. Sound. But look, who really cares, to be fair? Gavin says the hole being tested is horseshit. Brigids won Connacht not at their best and giving away silly goals compared to Scotstown, who gave Ulster everything. I felt they didn't have the legs today. Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? It's one of them things. Like Scotstown had the resilience in other games to come back. They had resilience to hold on. They were, you know, it was an up and down year for Scotstown. Like even in the Monaghan Football Championship at the start, couple of draws, defeats. Like it wasn't perfect from their, you know, from their kind of perspective, and it wasn't brilliant in regards to that. But you know, I suppose when the goal went tough today, when it came to turning around, they just couldn't really find it within themselves. The substitutes didn't really make too much of a difference. They couldn't really get their big players in the game, and they were just running out of energy a little bit. You know, like maybe a lack of belief a little bit. I'm not sure, but they did look dead on their feet because they were struggling in the last like 10 minutes or so. It wasn't that they were missing a few chances, but they weren't creating enough, I think, is what you would say. Gavin says Conor Carrolls has to work on his kickouts. Felt like we could have lost it at the end, but great defending. Shane says easy All-Ireland for Dingle. I wouldn't agree with you there now, to be fair. I wouldn't agree with that. Look, I think it's a similar kind of way for Brigids and Dingle in the sense that Dingle have the star quality. They have the individual brilliance in the Gainies and Paul Gainey in particular. Brigids, in terms of how they're set up and their coaching and the system that they adopt and the press that they adopted on Rory Beggan. It'd be interesting. Look, in Croke Park, maybe it suits Dingle. I think the All-Ireland finals in Croke Park, correct me if I'm wrong there. But, you know, that probably suits a Dingle a little bit more in terms of that open space, Paul Gainey and everything else. Look, put Dingle as the favourites right now. If I had to call it now, I'd probably say Dingle are the favourites, but I wouldn't sleep on this Brigids team because they are a team that's incredibly experienced. You know, it's their second All-Ireland final in 3 seasons. They didn't win that one a couple of years ago. They didn't get over the line on that particular occasion, but they are an incredible team. And, you know, you can't sort of sleep on them, in my opinion. Gavin says, whoever won today, I felt their county will be relegated because of how important Brigids and Scotstown are. Like Monaghan will need Beggan. Yeah, it is a fair point. It is interesting, like maybe, you know, like Monaghan probably rely maybe on some of the Scotstown lads more, like Beggan and McCarthy and McCarran. Like looking at it from a St. Brigids perspective, there won't be Ben O'Carroll in there. I suppose he won't have Brian Stack. Maybe Bobby Nugent might come into the team after how well he played this year, to be fair. But yeah, maybe that could be to the detriment of Roscommon ever so slightly. But yeah, fair play to Brigids. They just dug it out in the end. Like even looking at it here, like they only scored you know, like 3 points in the final 20 minutes, you know. But in terms of turnovers, in terms of challenges, they weren't like, I looked at Ballybowden yesterday and like Dingle were creating goal chance after goal chance. They were floating long balls in, causing all sorts of havoc. They were scoring 2-pointers. They were hitting them from all sorts of different angles. And that's why you could see the comeback happening. But in this game, I don't think there was enough variation from Scotstown, really. They were trying to work, they were trying to run the ball through the centre. They weren't really trying to loop any balls maybe in on top of Darren Hughes or something like that, you know. They were kind of struggling in regards to that. And yeah, I think Brigids did very well. Like they were turning the ball over, as I said, and they were really, really impressive in relation to that. But yeah, fair play to Brigids. Getting over the line in the end, 116 to 112. Bobby Nugent with 7 points. Conor Hand was good as well with 2. Charlie O'Carroll came off the bench, got a point as well. Paul McGrath, Rory Fallon, all on the score sheet there. Eddie Nolan in midfield. So very impressive there. Francis McGuire, 3 points from him from Scotstown. Thought he played well. And in and around midfield as well, Michael McCarville was decent as well. 2 points in the game. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, your opinions in the comments. Let me know your predictions for the final. We'll be back 8 o'clock later tonight, myself and the lads, to run through the games. And yeah, plenty of talking points from the Camogie final to yesterday's game to the intermediate action as well. So we'll run through it all a little bit later. Hit the like button if you could. Helps the channel out. Subscribe as well if you could. And we'll speak to you all later.